Lost Kingdoms is another one from my childhood, but unlike Harley's Humongous Adventure, this is one I actually had the privilege to play. Thanks, Blockbuster! In this game, you control a princess. Yes, a princess. Her default name is Katia, but they give you an option to change it. Considering the whole game is based around cards, I gave her something a little more fitting. If you get the joke, don't worry, medical help is on the way. Don't ask questions, just go where they tell you to. The main mechanic of this game is your ability to control monsters through cards using an artifact called the Rune Stone. Still following me? There are three types. Weapon cards, which do an attack then disappear, independent cards, which you summon to fight alongside you, all of Final Fantasy X, and summon cards, which take your place for a brief second and deliver an attack. Really useful if you get backed into a corner. You need magic stones to fuel this art, which enemies drop when they're damaged or defeated. Because of this, you really don't want to miss, lest you run out of resources and start having to use HP to fuel your attacks. In this sense, you're only as powerful as your deck, and Katia only gains more health and magic power by collecting more rune stones from the other neighboring kingdoms, which, naturally, is tied to story progression. It's not too big a problem considering most of the monsters are laughably easy to beat, but just be warned, you're not the only one slinging cards around. If you find you're still having trouble, the card shop and its enigmatic owner are here to help you. Here you can buy, sell, copy cards, and even upgrade them to newer, more powerful forms that kick infinitely more ass. But to do so, you need experience, which your cards gain individually from killing foes. Even if they don't participate in battle, there is a small passive EXP boost just from being in the deck. So you're encouraged to walk into every area with a variety of different cards, just so you open up all your options as soon as possible. Here's a hint. Focus on your Dragonoid cards. You'll thank me later. I tell you this because until you beat the game, you cannot re-enter areas. So if you make it to the final stage with a subpar deck, you have to settle for what you've got because there will be no way to gain more resources. And speaking of resources, let's talk about this deck system. You can bring up to 30 cards with you at any given time, but after you use up a card's power, it's gone until you exit the area, meaning if you run out of cards halfway through, you're screwed. Katia has no kind of personal attack, meaning once the deck runs dry, she's completely useless. Because encounters are random and you can't flee, your only option is to abort the mission and try again from the beginning, which of course is total bull. The camera is also crap. It's one of those locking viewpoints that can show the action from 4 different directions, none of which focus on what you're actually trying to look at. But despite these flaws, once you understand the ups and downs of the system and get a feel for how all your cards work, it becomes surprisingly easy to burn the hours away in this game. Creating the perfect deck based on your playstyle becomes an art, and once you're nailing things like elemental weaknesses and proper use of status effects, Lost Kingdoms really starts to pick up steam. It's the dangling carrot factor. Whether it be only needing 100 more experience for that next card evolution, or the fact that your goal, Katia's father, is always just one step ahead of you, you always feel like you're working towards something grand. It also helps that the world is littered with diverse areas hosting tons of unique scenarios and enemies, some of which you can only discover by talking to Gerd at the card shop. But my favorite part is the music. Tons of pleasant, easy to listen to tracks permeate this game. They're not too epic and not too calm either. They find a happy middle ground where they're just catchy enough to stick in your mind for days, even years. I started teaching myself guitar a couple months back, and just by screwing around, I miraculously found myself playing the riff from the Plains of Roll tune. I love this game. I love every part of it. Well, most of it. Some of it. Bits and pieces of it. It definitely has its shortcomings, but from beginning to end, it's got that special kind of magic that makes you want to live in this world. Even Toonami agrees with me on this one. Which makes it even more shocking that until a week or two ago, I had no idea Lost Kingdoms had a sequel. The first was such an underrated gem, but that was partly because a lot of gamers couldn't see past its issues. A sequel to something like that can go one of two ways. Either it's given the devs the time they need to iron out the kinks in their formula and make what the original should have been, or its ambition ultimately cripples the experience and you get a title that's an absolute failure. Lost Kingdoms 2 is the former. Man, talk about taking a quantum leap forward. There are so many things they improved in the sequel, we'd be here for hours if I explained them all. For one, you actually have a cooperative camera now. You can move all 360 degrees, which is helpful because there's stuff hidden everywhere in this game. Even more so than before, you want to check every single nook and cranny for stuff, because chances are that one spot you missed will still have something in it. The challenge is also a lot better too. Most enemies are more durable, forcing you to use strategy and really take advantage of those elemental weaknesses so you can minimize the resources you need for every encounter. And speaking of encounters, here's some welcome news. They're not random anymore. You want to fight something? Just run on up to it and start fighting. If you don't want to fight, just keep on running. It's that simple. The grind is also made more bearable due to the precious blue fairies being much easier to catch, giving you that extra little bit you need to carry on when you need it. Cards aren't the only things that gain experience this time. Now Terra, your new character, can also level up. Every new level grants you 10 more HP, 1 more crystal, and just like Demon Souls, extra defense. In the original, it didn't matter how many stones you had. Katia still took the same amount of damage from every foe. Here, you actually become more durable, which is a nice change of pace considering this time, you can now return to previous areas. What a concept, right? On the subject of areas, there's some actual towns you can visit this time, full of people and hidden goodies to find. There are tons of new cards to play around with, making the shops even more valuable than before, and because you can go back and grind for experience, there's nothing stopping you from just taking a break and backtracking for a bit till you think you're ready. Independent cards became more intelligent, summon cards now give you 2 attacks to choose from, and weapon cards become your bread and butter because of how tough some of these enemies are. There's even a new type of card that lets you turn into a monster, something I thought should have been a no-brainer right from the beginning. I can't tell if the graphics actually look any better, but now that you get a closer look at them, you really start to appreciate all the little details they packed into the world. Even the loading screens look a lot better. Only problem, you can't screw around with the text like in the original. What the hell? That was my favorite part! I also ended up liking the cast a bit more. Granted, it took a while to crack the nostalgia barrier, but in the end, these guys are just a lot more fun. Terra herself, well, even though I didn't like her design at first, I grew to love her more as a character. Her backstory is a little stronger than just you're a princess and you happen to be able to save the world. And she comes across as a tougher, more independent woman, making her fit the hero role just a little better than her predecessor. Hell, the cast even has voice actors this time around.
Ha! Kandari architecture, always making things bigger than they need to be.
Mediocre ones, but hey, it has voice actors. Not everything is new though. There are plenty of recognizable faces and places, complete with their original music. There's even throwbacks to the first game, such as the pillars you have to drop in the desert to open the doors. In short, the first game will always hold a special place in my heart, but there's not a single thing I wanted out of the original that I didn't get in the sequel. I can easily recommend both these games to anyone interested. Lost Kingdoms is a great action game, and Lost Kingdoms 2 is an even better RPG. If you can actually get your hands on them, these games are definitely worth adding to your collection. Which leaves me with only one joke left to make.
It's time to